So basically, like, I saw you around the office. I was at Ogilvy for 6 years. I started out as like kind of a hybrid role and then worked my way into, I got so lucky to be given a shot at copywriting, and then left as a senior and then went to a place called Terry and Sandy.
Oh, I know them. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was a interesting experience. And then I left, but I moved out to LA. I follow my brothers actually, and I'm from San Diego originally, but I
Oh,
moved
okay.
out here like probably 9 months ago now.
Okay.
It feels like 5 because of COVID, but
Yeah. It's a strange time.
it really is. So I hit record on
Okay.
Zoom. So we actually record through Zoom. If you're okay with me recording video, I'll do that too.
Whatever is good for you, Tim. My image is not something I need to protect.
Okay.
At this point.
Yeah. So did you get it's possible you didn't, which actually I think is okay, but did you get like an allow recording pop up?
I don't think I did. It says recording on my screen. I could dial back in.
That's
if you
perfect.
Want.
Nope. Okay. That's perfect.
Okay.
I just wanted to double check. This is kind of a new way I'm going about it. But I've done it for the last 4 times.
Okay.
What do you say we hop in there?
You're in charge.
Okay. Awesome. So I'm just before I start, if I ask you something that you're so honest that I just want to like ask you questions that maybe I wouldn't ask other people, but if there's something you don't want to answer, just let me know and we'll move on.
That's fine. You know what they say about honesty? Once you can fake that, you've got it made.
I didn't know that, but that's something to live by for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So what's your problem with Gary Vee? Let's start there.
You know what? Gary Vee, in my mind, is an archetype. And there's a certain archetype I do not like. I never liked Reggie Jackson because, like, shut your mouth and hit the ball. I never liked Billy Martin because just managed the ball club. I never liked George Steinbrenner. They're bullies. I don't like the guy in the White House now, whatever his name is. He's a bully. Gary Vee is a braggart and a bully, and I don't know what he's done. And 99% of what he puts online that I see, and I unfriend people who repost him because I'm trying not to see him, is so in your face asinine that it just offends me. And it'd be one thing, we're in advertising. It would be one thing if he produced 150 great ads a year and I said, God, that guy's got something to tell me. But I can't name one thing that he's done except kill Mr. Peanut that even entered my consciousness. So I don't want to hear his advice. I don't believe anything about his ethics, his morals, his success story, or his grooming habits, or his sneakers, to tell you the truth. So I just find the whole package just not who I am.
That's fair. It's tough because I'm kind of a fan of him. But
are you okay?
No. I mean, like that's why it's interesting, and that's why I wanted to ask you. I mean, yeah. I don't like telling people that because I think there's kind of a stigma. Here's the thing: everything you said is true, like in terms of creative work, in terms of everything like that. I guess what I like about him is that is not like the work your ass off mindset, or a lot of everything that you said, but some of the things that I don't know, I just kind of find him inspiring sometimes. Here's a guy that launched, was the first to do Google Ads and turned his father's wine company into an online business, started VaynerMedia, which totally agree, like their creative isn't that great, but like it's one of the only agencies that's hiring right now. So I'm just kind of like, what's this doing right?
I mean, I think you have to earn your prominence. You can't just kind of buy it. And let's see where he is in 10 years.
See where I'll throw it on your cal. Is that cool?
Yeah.
10 years from now, we'll revisit it?
Yeah. And if I'm still still alive. And yeah, you know, I am also fundamentally, I don't believe in always on content. I believe content should, for it to wrestle for my attention, it has to be more than just present. It has to be good. Otherwise, you're just putting up flyers on a college rec hall bulletin board. It's just crap. And there's enough crap in our lives. And, you know, I always, and this is old fashioned. I won't say maybe it's old fashioned. I always felt there was, no matter what you do, you have to hold yourself to a standard. And some of the standard is doing good work, effective work, and respecting a viewer. And most important, respecting a viewer, because the golden rule wasn't written for companies, but I believe companies should abide by it. And that includes advertising agencies. Do unto others as you want others to do unto you. And I feel like he just inundates the world with crap just to be in front of the world. So I'm offended by that. And
no, I totally get it.
That's the Twitter way. We have, I think there's a guy in the White House, I forget his name, who does the same thing. Whenever the news, the camera moves off him, he has to get it back on him, to the point where he'd, you know, explode a bomb somewhere if the camera's straight too far.
I mean, look, that's totally fair. I think that leads into something else that I wanted to talk to you about. Sure. And I love segues. Like, I love like natural segues. So hopefully this isn't the first one, but Gary Vee, like, what for, you know, he would classify himself as new world. You know, he's very much about like shooting out content, digital, just get out LinkedIn. It doesn't matter if it sucks, all that sort of stuff. The result of that mindset, I'm pretty sure you would agree with this, is that shit sucks on digital. Yeah. Like 90% of ads at least suck on digital. Do you think there's a way?
Just ads.
Right. Okay. Just in terms of content?
No, it's actually, I got to believe there are maybe three, and I'm speaking off the top of my head. I haven't prepared notes, but there's probably 3 reasons or 4 that you'd go online: to shop, for information about something, to be entertained, or for porn. Would you basically agree with that?
I mean, yeah, I haven't thought about it a lot, but
I would guess those 4 categories, and maybe entertainment and porn overlap, but I won't even go there.
Does that include connection, like, you know, staying
and then social connection? Let's say, so those are the 5 main categories. I would imagine those 5 categories, like Bud, Miller, Coors, dominate 85% of the usage of the channel. I'm gonna stick with that. When I shop, I find every shopping experience woeful. I can't find any information about any product outside of what Amazon says I should buy, and that's all sponsored links. If I want to buy something fairly complicated, where I want to actually make an intelligent decision, not a 4.3 stars out of 5, and, you know, Jill from Winona, Minnesota likes it, I can't find it. And then in terms of information, we've been so bludgeoned by Wikipedia, which is really a crappy resource. I mean, there's really not a great deal of good information on Wikipedia. It's available. It's just not very good. I don't find, I mean, of course I spend time online. I read the New York Times. I respect the New York Times. But beyond the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, I don't know, and my social feeds, and half the time I end up thinking the people on them are kind of jackasses. I'm not happy, you know, I'm not happy with the quality of information I get. You know, my wife and I, as you know, just moved into a new home, so we have to buy a new everything. You can get no real help online.
in terms of figuring out what you should buy for your home specifically?
Yeah, like I want, what's the top rated refrigerator? Everyone's top rated. There's nothing that gets lower than 4.2. you know.
So, yeah, I mean, it's all like, it's a system that's gamed for sure.
Yeah, and so if you go back and so you started talking about Gary Vee and modern marketing and blah 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 blah, but if you go back to even Amazon 10 years ago, my thesis on Amazon was what Amazon did brilliantly, and I feel it's been corrupted by sponsored by what do you call it, sponsored posts and things like that. Whatever their algorithm is, whoever pays for the top thing gets the top thing. If I wanted to buy Bombas socks, they're good running socks, and it was like 12 pages into my, even though I searched Bombas socks. But if you go back to say Amazon 2004, what I figured out in 2004 was what made Amazon, in my mind, successful, at least to my generation, was Amazon basically replicated the archetypical small town America. So Amazon was a main street with 25 different stores on it. Each of the merchants knew your name. They had in their memory what you bought before. So they had some knowledge of what your preferences were, and they spoke to you accordingly. So you actually got served things. If you bought a book on the history of the iPhone, they might suggest the history of the Android for you. And it would be, so some of the time, it would be as good as a personal recommendation would be. And now, so all that stuff I thought was pretty endemic to, say, 1930s America, white picket fence kind of crap, where people knew your name. No, we're too big a country now. Nobody knows your name. So we digitalized that. All that service is gone. It's so essentially the online experience, in my mind, is the same as the big box store experience. You can't find anything. There's no one to help you. God forbid you have a problem. You're screwed.
Totally fair. George, I'm just going to shut my window.
Sure.
There's some construction going on outside.
Yeah, I suck the air out of the room, so be careful.
No, this is what I want. This is what I want. Okay, so in lieu of what you just said, because you're saying that like online, it's difficult to find maybe honest, reliable sources to be able to sort through products.
I mean, I can go to Consumer Reports, but why don't I just go to Consumer Reports? I mean, that's not a new channel. That's a new delivery system at that point, if I'm just going to Consumer Reports.
Right. Is your suggestion, I'm not sure if it's related, that advertising could have a role in helping people understand?
That was traditionally advertising's role. If 100 years ago I were working for Listerine, I would write an ad, you know, because the concept of dental hygiene was relatively new 100 years ago, let's say. I mean, if you were a farm boy, you weren't rinsing. You might not be brushing. So I educated you, because where else would you be educated? There wasn't a family tradition of teeth brushing. And I talked to you about germs in your mouth and how germs can lead to decay, and decay can lead to bad breath. And if you take this, it's got a special astringent on it, wipes out the germs for up to 24 hours. And I'd write a little essay on that. And it was nice, you know, there wasn't a lot of entertainment in the world, and you read it. But that's traditionally what advertising did. You know, if you were buying a Nikon camera 30 years ago, Nikon told you about the quality of its lenses, or the speed of its shutters, or the fineness. I don't know anything about cameras, so I'm bluffing. The size of its sensor, or the variety of its f-stops. It gave you information, so and needed to establish a brand personality, so you believed that they were that they were on your side rather than just shilling. That's how it's supposed to work.
Right. But in today's day and age, right, like there's so much clutter. There's never been more, stuff clogging up channels, particularly digitally, which is now the majority of most spend. And people don't trust advertising. I don't trust advertising, so to me, like, I guess, like, what's the opportunity for a brand to earn somebody's trust and be a reliable source
Right.
of, hey, this product might be good for you?
Well, I think there's at least two bits to that. The one thing I'm not 100% sure on is that digital is the dominant channel. I mean,
just in terms of spend.
It probably is when you talk about paid search and things like that, but I'm not sure it is in terms of if you take paid search out and things like that, because broadcast is but that's splitting hairs. But the chances are, if I said to you, Tim, is there any advertising you like? And you'd probably say Apple at some degree, and Nike to some degree, and maybe one or two other things. No?
Yeah, I would. I would. For me, what I'm trying to get off the ground is a comedy ad agency. I'm definitely curious what you think about that. But I think there's so many funny ads that kind of fly below the radar.
Like what?
So, okay,
Halo Top?
What's up?
The Halo Top people, I think 72 and Sunny did a nice campaign a couple of years ago with the robots, the existential. No, not the bots one. There was a depressed ice cream guy, and little kids would come up to the ice cream truck.
I haven't seen that one, but that sounds amazing.
I'll send. I and have them.
Oh yeah, please. I like this Clearasil ad that came out about 5 years ago is probably one of my favorite ads, and it's the tagline is "We don't know you, we just know your acne" or something like that. And it's them trying to, like, kind of mocking how people make commercials trying to appeal to millennials, and it's just so dumb. And so they're just being super bad at it, and it's just really funny. And then there's this Palace Skateboards ad with Jonah Hill.
I haven't seen that. Yeah,
it's so dumb funny. It's like, yeah. So there's definitely a lot of ads that apply to my personal taste,
right?
Particularly in the comedy space, that are done really well. Apple it is obviously great, but I think Nike, in my opinion, is far better. At least for me, the work that they consistently turn out is not necessarily artistic, but like so emotional. The ad that they just put out with the split screen, like they're always hitting it out of the park.
And I guess my point would be that people are quick to say everyone hates advertising, but then they're quick to talk about the advertising they love. And I think when people say they hate advertising, it's because so much advertising is badly done.
Absolutely.
And my guess is that when advertising actually does impart useful information in an executionally brilliant way, and that useful information is bona fide information, and I don't know the Clearasil spot you mentioned, but if it's bona fide information about clearing up your skin, not just some platitude about the zit and the date, it's bona fide information, and they've connected with you in a genuine way. You would regard that, and then on top of it, it's entertaining. You would regard that as an amalgam that you would expect from a coworker or a friend. If you and I knew each other, you would expect from me, I mean, it's probably the reason you called me, is you'd expect from me information entertainingly delivered with no bullshit. So I think you can say people don't like advertising, but I think if you go back very earliest days of communication. So if you ever heard of this anthropologist called Desmond Morris, who traces humankind, basically descent from trees to present day. If you said from the earliest days of communication, sitting around a hearth, a fire, on a ship, it was, I have to tell you to do, I have to get your attention. I have to tell you to do something, and I have to tell you why to do it. And if I can do that in a lovable way, it's all going to work out together. That hasn't changed. I think what's happened is people don't actually stick to the value exchange in communication. All I'm going to do is scream at you about Verizon's great network. Why would you like that? You've never liked that. It's like having a teacher who screams at you for being a fucktard about not knowing anything about trigonometry. You're not going to like that teacher. And you never will, even if that teacher is doing a good job for you holistically on the long term. But if I make it interesting, if I speak to you as a human and I give you useful information, you're going to like it. That's just the way it goes. Yes, styles might change. Just like, you know, I grew up in an era where comedians told jokes. Comedians don't tell jokes anymore, but they still connect with an audience. They tell a story. It builds in a certain arc. And then you do something to kind of subvert reality and move on, and then you tell the next one. And that's kind of how comedy works, right? At some level. But if you're unlikable, it's not going to work. If you're not interesting, it's not going to work. And if you don't provide something at the end, it's not going to work. But you can't say because I have an old friend, my oldest friend and I, we still like one-liners. And for whatever reason, I was on a Rodney Dangerfield site. You can go to Rodney Dangerfield's site right now and get 171 one-liners. They're still funny to me. You know, you might not like one-liners. You might think they're Borscht Belt and not funny. You might like a comedy, like I don't find Norm Macdonald funny, but they connect to people. They give you something, and then there's a resolve, and then we move on. That's the way communication works. It never started with junk, though. It never started with, I'm going to tell you a bunch of shit you don't really care about, but because I'm in your face, we're going to have a connection. It never worked that way, modern or not.
So could we apply that way of thinking? Because that's what I'm trying to do. Like, could we apply that way of thinking to these new digital platforms?
Okay, I'm going to make this so simple. Like I say, even a CEO could get it. Communication, there's a structure to how communication works. Smart people, not creative people, have studied this. First, and you can't really dispute this. I mean, I worked in digital shops. They can dispute it. They can say, well, if you get the right message at the right time, you know, blah, blah, blah. But how many messages, how many right messages do you get at the right time in real life, Tim? I mean, I got a full head of hair like you. I still get baldness cures in my email box. So something's going wrong. Like, I don't trust the data. But communication basically works like this. First, I have to get your attention, right? Second, I have to tell you what I want. Third, I have to persuade you. That's the way it works. So if you're sitting at home with your roommate, I don't know if you're married, you have a roommate, whatever, and you want the roommate to get you a cup of seltzer from the kitchen. You say, hey, Bob. Yeah? What do you want, Tim? Okay, so I got your attention. Would you get me a glass of seltzer? So now you've communicated what you want. This way commercials work too. This way jokes work. Now you've communicated what you want. Would you get me a glass of seltzer? And he looks at you like you're an idiot. If you do, I'll take the garbage out. So you persuaded him. That's the way it works. how would any other communication work any differently?
No, I totally agree with that. I guess what I'm saying is, why can't that approach to communication, why can't the quality that we have, at Ogilvy's and these great agencies, why can't that be applied to a digital platform?
It can.
Okay.
But it takes work. Now there were days, a lot older than you, where it didn't really matter. I mean, the mantra used to be in direct marketing used to be list, offer, creative. Did you ever hear that?
No.
Okay, so in direct mail, it was list for success, list, offer, creative. So if I get it to your address and I know you like surfing, I send you a note on the outside of the envelope. It says Tim, right? That's personal. Save 10% on a new surfboard. I'd get you to open it. I'd probably be able to sell the product, even if what I wrote on the inside was a bunch of crap. So they ported that thinking over into the online space, but I don't think it really works, because list, offer, creative might work if they know you're a surfing fan and they know tomorrow's going to be 84 and the water temperature is going to be 75 and you're really into that. But it's not going to work if they're trying to sell you a cell phone or a cell phone plan or a new vacuum cleaner or a pool cleaning service, because there's nothing that genuinely appealing. What they forgot about is people. You're interrupting people. And if you're going to interrupt people, you better interrupt them with something good. So what the scientists in the business, and the digital business is often occupied by scientists. There's data scientists, there's customer relationship marketing people, there's analytics people, there's this people, there's that people. There's very few creatives. And they say, well, if you put the button here and say learn more rather than find out more, you'll get better response. You put the button in orange and have a glow on it, but none of that matters to you, does it? As
Personally?
a human? Yeah.
No, of course.
But you can only bring
matter.
your personal thing into it. You can only judge based on you. But because I have a holistic view on this, because I've worked at digital shops before, like a Digitas, and you had the MBAs come in, Harvard MBAs and Bain people, and they basically don't like creatives because they can't understand it, because it's not reliable. It's not reliable. So they say, well, let's eliminate as much unreliability from the selling process as we can, and we'll make it mathematical. So we will make all of selling an if-then proposition. And the things you see online now that you hate are if-then propositions. It's science. They're generated by, you know about this. You know about programmatic and whatever it's called, algorithmic-based messaging and shit like that.
Yeah, 100%.
It's totally off from what people want.
Right. This is me. I don't agree with this, but this is me playing devil's advocate to better understand the rationale. So if the name of the game is ultimately selling something, and the math says that, creating in your face ads that, people don't like leads to more sales, and good creative doesn't, how do you basically, what's your opinion on that? How do you justify that creative is important if the math doesn't support it?
Well, who says the math doesn't support it?
It's just the numbers that people share a lot.
Numbers lie.
Okay.
Numbers are so easily manipulated, and you've got whole infrastructures at agencies and clients to prove that crap works. But at some point, you have to look inside yourself and say, well, would I buy from this? Why would it be interesting? What would make, if I find it so distasteful, why are all these people, am I so wrong that I find this distasteful?
When I first got in to trying to marry good media with good creative, the first conversation that somebody had with me, this, really successful media person, and I'm not saying it's true, I don't know, because it makes zero sense to me. But what he said was, I don't know why, but whenever I try to make something that's more creative versus something that's a hard sell, like you call it a conversion ad, it performs worse in terms of conversions, in terms of making sales. So again, I don't know that for a fact, but that's something that...
Well, it depends on your metric. I can make this really simple. Okay. Let's picture in your head the number 1 at the bottom and the number 10 at the top of the screen in 2 columns. The column on whatever your right, let's say, is building the brand. Okay.
Yep.
And the column on the left is, let's say, salesiness. Okay? You with me? So you have 2 sales. 1, act now. 1, we're soft and friendly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So chart, let's say, a Verizon commercial on that scale.
I would say it's pretty salesy.
Yeah.
Overall,
so
yeah.
You probably go 8-2.
Right.
And a Nike commercial, you might go 2-8.
Yep.
Okay. But there's a lot of commercials you'd probably go, if you're really being caustic, you'd probably go, it's 0 on the brand sale scale, because all you really remember is $49.99 a month.
Mm-hmm.
Which, by the way, you as a consumer know that's a lie.
Right.
Because it's not 40. But, or, your Jan, the Toyota woman commercial. You can, if they have that out where you are now, but the Toyota girl or the balloons. So you're at 1.9 or 1.10, right? And then you might have a Nike commercial, which is really more 10.1. You with me?
Yep.
So what happens if you multiply them, like a simple fractions thing? So you multiply 1 times 10 on the Verizon commercial, you get a score of 10, right? And on the Nike commercial, multiply 10 times 1, you get a 10, right? So I'd say from a marketing point of view, those are equal. You get a score of a 10. But if I could do very good for the brand, tell you nice reasons to like me, and incorporate in that commercial smart reasons to buy me, I'm a 5.5. Let's just say I did a good job, I'm a 5.5. Or say I did more branded job and I'm a 6.4. I can't be more than 10. I'm a 24, I'm a 25, or I'm a 21 if I'm a 7.3. So what you're looking for is a balance. So of course, if I wanted to sell Ginsu steak knives, I'd say, buy my fucking knives. These are the greatest fucking knives in the world. I'd slice a tomato. Wow, look at that tomato slice. If you buy them now, I'll give you 3 free. And you're going to buy them. But you know what? You have no brand. You've had no enduring value. The minute that commercial stops running, you have no more sales. So your friend is right. If I need to sell, if I'm running a tag sale in my garage, because I'm not opening the George store, I need to get rid of an old flower pot. I'm going to go flower pot, best deal in town, and I'll sell it. Just like I would with Lost Dog, God forbid. I get the message out there. I don't need to build a brand. But part of our job is to build a brand, is to build longevity, is to build lifetime value. Your friend isn't measuring that. He's just measuring quantitatively a sale.
So absolutely. I totally agree with that. I think a problem that marketers are having, and one of the reasons I think large agencies that are really focused on quality creative and building brands are suffering is that, here they are getting a bunch of sales maybe in the short term, but there's no brand. There's no focus on the brand, and it's right. Less measurable and whatever. But how do you go about convincing somebody, whether you think they're smart or not, like, how do you go about convincing them of the importance of a brand? You said some things, but how would you do that?
Well, I mean, it's sad that we even have to ask that question. I mean, because very few of us wear a single piece of clothing or have a single object in our homes that doesn't have some kind of brand mark on it. So we bought them kind of for a reason. And, you know, there's a long, you know, I actually wrote something this morning. This is a trivial example, but take something really prosaic like mouthwash. I think I mentioned, you know, I bought mouthwash just to have it in the house, because if my wife makes garlic something, I want to have a little mouthwash in the house. I'm not a regular mouthwash user. I brush my teeth, that does the job. But, you know, it used to be the staple of TV advertising was consumer packaged goods. So they were advertising Scope and Listerine and Levoris. I actually shot a bunch of mouthwash commercials early in my career. But these guys, the people at the packaged goods company said, well, we can do this cheaply now. We don't have to buy broadcast TV. We can send out 1 trillion messages with Gary Vaynerchuk and on social media, and I'm going to hit the right target, and I can save all this money, and we're going to have response media, and this is going to happen, and that's going to happen, and we can maintain our brand on the cheap. You with me so far? Mm-hmm. So then you go to the store, and that's fine. I haven't seen a Listerine commercial in 20 years, partly a function of I don't really watch television, partly a function of I bet you the spend is down in some infinitesimal level because they've convinced themselves that they can build sales without spending money to build sales. So my wife is just coming in, so she might interrupt. You go to the Walgreens and you go to the shelf, and there's the purple Listerine and there's the purple Walgreens stuff. And the purple Listerine is $6 and the purple Walgreens stuff is $4. And you go, well, they both say anti-cavity, and they both say added fluoride, and they both say blah, 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 and they both look the same, and they both have the same color. They're both in the same shaped bottle. And you go, well, I'm going to buy the cheaper one. But if you had a brand and you believed in Listerine because they spent money in telling you to buy Listerine, Listerine would get $6 for $4 worth of stuff. That's the value of a brand. I mean, that's the value of a brand. So now Listerine, there's no reason to pay a premium for it. They've taken away the reasons to take a premium for it. I believed in, I mean, there's probably 50 products in your life where you believe, for whatever reason, this product's brand will give you some indefinable extra, and you'll spend extra money on it. From buying Coca-Cola rather than store brand, to buying Nike socks rather than Walgreens socks, Band-Aids rather than generic. The headphones you have on are probably really expensive. You can buy them in the store. A lot of that's because they built brands to support it. When you stop doing that, and someone in, you know, I'm not making a racial slur, but someone in China makes Nike headphones that look just like Nike, not Nike, Apple headphones that look just like Apple headphones, well, fine. We probably all would have switched to Kmart sneakers by now if we didn't have those Nike commercials we loved. And they're probably made in the same factory. They're probably made by the same workers with the same material. But supporting the brand gives you permission to charge more.
I totally agree. We shouldn't have to answer that question. And thank you for giving that example. I mean, I couldn't agree more.
I mean, I saw a chart yesterday because it's in the news. And I pitched the account and won it 25 years ago when I was at FCB for the Postal Service. And I just said, yeah, the Postal Service is the 800-pound gorilla, but against UPS, which at the time was doing great advertising with Ammirati, and FedEx, which at the time was doing great advertising with BBDO, and was still had the running on the power of the fast-talking man that Alan Gargano did. Post office comes across as an underdog, so you can be competitive. And I found out the post office delivers more than a day than UPS and FedEx combined do in a month for less money to more addresses, more efficiently, more stuff on time. But you walk around and everybody goes, yeah, the post office sucks, FedEx efficient. Well, that's not reality based. That's brand perception based. They needed a brand. So now they're probably going to go out of business, yeah, because of a retrograde politician, but also because they never built a brand. And we can do this all day. We can do this all. I mean, IBM used to build a great computer, a ThinkPad, but they never wanted to build a brand around it. And Apple ate their lunch.
Okay, so you're talking about, like, you mentioned something that, again, I think is my second segue, and I'm really proud of this one. So you were talking about research that surprises me when you said it, with the fact that the Postal Service is delivering more mail and all that sort of stuff. So you're regarded as one of the best copywriters, in the industry today, maybe in history, and I agree. Just reading your blog and knowing you from Ogilvy. So what is your writing process? I just kind of want to dig into that in terms of, even the start. When you get a brief, regardless of what the task is, how do you approach it, right out the gate?
Well, I mean, that's a tough question. And tonight's my last class teaching at Ad House until next semester. So I get that question a fair amount. I mean, it's hard for me not to sound like 100 years old sometimes, partly because I am 100 years old. But, I grew up in an era where you went into advertising after having done many other things, or a few other things. You taught school, you were in the Peace Corps, you played baseball, whatever. We didn't directly go to ad school. And, a lot of us along the way wanted to be academics or lawyers, and for whatever reason, we couldn't make it. But there is kind of an investigative quality in the old days. It doesn't exist anymore because everything's due in an hour. But in the old days, you visited the factory, you learned everything you could about the product. That was part of the process. So if I were going to sell you that microphone shields you have, I forget what that's called, I would do research and say, gee whiz, I'd be sitting at home at night and then say, why do people have a shield in front of their microphone? Does it diffuse sound waves? What does it do? So I'd find out, and somebody would say to me, I'd ask my friend Steve, who runs Sonic Union, and I said, why do they put that shield up? He said, well, because people spit. Spit makes noise. So I'd say, well, I'm making this up. So I say, Steve, how much do they spit? He goes, well, I don't know. So I'd go to the library and say, in speaking in an average minute, how much spit comes out of your mouth? I'm making shit up. And somebody would say, in an hour, a tablespoon of spit comes out of your mouth. You want to keep that off the microphone. That's all static. That's all noise. That would be interesting to me. Mm-hmm. You find a way to make it interesting. So what you have to keep doing is keep probing. Yeah, but why? It's a little bit what a 2-year-old does. Why do I have to put my napkin on the lap? Well, because, and the mom might say, or the dad might say, if he's attentive, well, first of all, your lap is going to hold it. Secondly, if you think about it, if you stand up after a meal when you don't have a napkin on your lap, most of the junk is on your lap. So we put a napkin there, it catches it. You get it? And the kid goes, yeah. Same thing we do as a copywriter. We find things out. Our job is to look at the world and keep turning it upside down until we find something interesting.
Okay, so then with this tablespoon of spit, you know, if let's continue this example. So you're like advertising this pop filter, diffuser, whatever you want to call it. How would you then go about writing a headline?
I think I'd say, well, tablespoon of spit is kind of gross, but I'd say something like, you know, audio quality out depends on audio quality in. You don't have any audio quality in if every sound wave comes with an ounce of spit. That was too long, but if my deadline was 1:49, so I got a minute, I'd say words that come with spit sound less good than words that come without spit.
Right.
And that would probably, if you were an audio engineer, stop you.
Right.
And then I would explain what I meant. I can't do it all in the headline, but I would find a way. When I was working on Watson, IBM Watson, you know, somebody said something to me, a client said something to me in passing. He said, well, Watson's a little smarter artificial intelligence. Watson, if you say to Watson, because he understands idiom and nuance and slang. So if you say to Alexa, and this might not be true today because things get more sophisticated over time. If you say to Alexa, what's the elephant in the room? Alexa is going to think first of elephants in rooms. Watson would understand it's a metaphor and be able to help you more efficiently. That's a bit of information that contextualizes the difference between one product A and product B in an interesting way, I think. I mean, if you go back to some of the old Volkswagen ads, and they made a big deal on the car floated. The bottom of the car was sealed. It floated. Well, you're not going to take your car out on a lake, but it became an emblem for quality, for precision, for a little obsessiveness about the engineering of the car. And the spit example, you're not really highly concerned with phlegm and shit, but you would, as a symbol of something larger, or maybe as a 10-part series on the efficacy of pop guards, you know, it might become a reason why your filter is better than somebody else's filter.
Got it. And then keep going.
No, and that I think is how, you know, now a lot of people say we can't differentiate products anymore because all products are the same. I happen not to believe that, but you know, I think you can always find something that's interesting, or most times you can find something that's interesting. Now, I've had the good fortune of having a career where I wasn't really doing tinfoil advertising and air freshener. I've always had, I have to stand up. My watch is telling me to stand up. You know, I've always had kind of high-end products that because they're expensive, people would be willing to invest a little time in finding out about them. I probably would not do the same for a tissue or a Q-tip or saran wrap, but that's kind of where a brand comes in also. I believe qualitatively in these things, and I'm choosing the ones that make it easier for me. Got
it. So I mentioned before that I'm trying to start semi-unsuccessfully a comedy ad agency. So, right. You know, most ad agencies just say they're full service or fall into traps of being like, hey, we're innovative and we'll give you everything you want and blah, 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 if you look at their websites.
Right.
So my thought was comedy is an effective way to get people to like you, and nobody's really putting a stake in the sand to say that outwardly. BFG was very much that, but
right.
I don't know. What do you think about that idea for an ad agency? Is that compelling?
In days of yore, and I mean, this is a really, really, really tough time to start anything, even your car engine, just because I think so much, I was talking to a potential whatever this morning, and I said, well, normally I'd ask you for a 3-year plan, but these days nobody even has a 3-minute plan. So, because everything could change. But, I think in days of yore, between Barton Graff, Cliff Freeman, which essentially was Barton Graff before Barton Graff was around, even, I'm going to go way back, Jack Tinker, which was a great agency that turned into Wells Rich Green, or didn't turn into, a lot of the people went over to Wells Rich Green from Jack Tinker. There were agencies that specialized in comedy. Because, as you said, comedy makes a connection to people, and it breaks through. It clutters. It breaks through the clutter of a commercial pod. I think it's a great idea. It's just, there's a lot. I think there's a lot of, just to use a project management term or a interactive term, digital term, there's a lot of dependencies on comedy. I think comedy is often very hard to do cheaply, because bad actors are bad comedians, and bad directors are not good at comedy. And the people who are good are highly paid for a reason. And there's nothing worse, as you know, than bad comedy. All you really have to do is go on YouTube and watch someone take like a What's Up commercial from 20 years ago and try to do it now. And it's horrible if it's not perfect. But I think it's a good idea because it's basically saying we're going to figure out a way to break through. I think what Jerry Graff and he I think he learned it from Cliff Freeman, did really well was they combined, a really strong branding element with comedy. I mean, Jerry Graff seemed to say, wait, 2 pizzas for $10? 2 pizzas for $10? 2 pizzas for $10? And you got it. And then it was like joke. And then usually a strong branded ending, which he stole from Cliff Freeman, pizza, pizza. So you got the mnemonic. It was very hardworking stuff. That's what gave them permission to do comedy. I mean, that's what gave clients permission to buy it.
Gotcha. Okay. Well,
but comedy's a hard thing, as you know, because it's hard to sell.
Yeah, I mean, particularly to more conservative people. What I'm trying to lean into now is to get my foot in the door is like we need comedy now more than ever. That seems like a sentiment that resonates with businesses, and so it makes them more willing to try. So that's kind of what I'm going for. But it's been extremely tough as somebody who really had no connections outside of mid-level people at Fortune 500 companies to get my foot in the door. So I was just curious what you thought is like an outward facing concept if you were putting your client hat on. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So one of the last things I wanted to ask you about is ageism. So you talk a lot about ageism. I think you're 61 now.
62 and a half.
62 and a half. So for advertising, that's not that it should be, but that's old, right?
It's my IQ too.
and
my shoe size.
That's a tremendously large foot. I don't know how you just stood up right there.
You know what? It was Clown College did it to me.
Clown College?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you just keep the clown shoes on.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. I think that sucks. And you were at Ogilvy for about 5 years, and then you were let go. And I'm not sure if that was before COVID or not. But did that, because you talk about like being like thanking somebody who fires you, but did that just like piss you off and make
Yeah,
you angry?
I'm exceedingly angry because I didn't deserve to be fired, and you should not staff a company based on demographics, and that's what's happening in the world today, frankly. And I'm not going to go any further because you get me in trouble. But demographics should not be a criterion.
Demographics in terms of what? Like age?
You name it.
Okay.
And maybe they were for too long. But the rebound from that should not be to follow it in a different way. So, you know, a lot of ageism in advertising, and I wrote this on my blog a while ago. A lot of ageism is really I don't want to payism, because older people, and it's easy to conflate the two because the old people are the people with the bigger salaries. A lot of us come from an industry that was a richer industry. It's no longer a rich industry, but we have salaries that we're fighting to maintain. But you know, and then there's just disdain because how could we possibly be smart? You know, I don't care about Chance the Rapper or whoever, and that probably makes me even older. But you know, it's the way the agency business is that, you know, I think I wrote something on my blog a while ago that I stole from Bob Hoffman, who's even older than I am. It's the Ad Contrarian, a popular blogger and speaker, where he listed all the Oscar winners and all the Pulitzer winners and all the Nobel Prize winners, I believe, from 2018, and they were all over 50. And it was basically all these people have, you know, won Oscars or best supporting this or, you know, biggest thinkers in the world, and not one of them could get hired to write a banner ad. You know, there's something wrong there. There's something, you don't all of a sudden get dumb. And people who have studied this would tell you that most people get more creative, at least in the visual arts and writing, as they get older. I mean, Updike, Philip Roth, Margaret Atwood did pretty well into their 60s, 70s, and even 80s. So it's not like all of a sudden you get bit by a dumb bug. You know, but that's the way the business is. But I happen to also think it's an attempt to depress wages.
So that's what you think the biggest cause of it is? Because it doesn't make sense to me outside of.
I think it's twofold. One is, or threefold, or fourfold. One is we're less likely to be tractable. So you have a new level of management that's 40, and they know everything. And my inclination is to say, no, that's not right. That makes no sense to me. Explain how that works. And they can't really, but they don't want to be challenged. That's number one. Number two is a lot of people believe like the Ozempic, the casting of the Ozempic commercials, like all old people do is walk around and sing about their blood pressure medicine as they get into golf carts and push their grandchildren on swings. And then number three is old people make more money.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense, and I, you know, if I was you, I would be extremely frustrated.
Yeah, I mean, it's an asinine. As I said a few minutes ago, I was working on the toughest assignment of my life when I was fired. I was making more money than I was costing the agency. It was on Boeing. It was trying to turn Boeing around. the CEO trusted Shelley, who was the CEO emeritus of Ogilvy. Shelley trusted me, who she had known for 20 years. It's not the kind of thing you can write a jingle and get out of the way. It was a complicated project. And you had to turn things around quickly. No offense to 25-year-olds. It takes a certain amount of skill. And, you know, I don't know who's going to do that kind of work at that place right now. I really don't. But that's not
imagine,
my problem.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine a more difficult assignment.
Yeah, I mean, it's to make that, you know, essentially, if you think about it as I did, that client essentially is a defense contractor. Defense contractors cannot speak in English. They are trained not to be honest. That's not the way they think. They have 2 planes that crash, and they would have had 20 more because the plane wasn't right. And they don't know how to talk to the public about what went wrong. That's a tough fucking job. That I don't know. You're not going to do that on social media. You're not going to send out a tweet. Oops.
So how did you, like, how far did you get? I mean, can you speak to like how you were trying to go about that? I would implode.
Well,
that's so scary.
You know, usually what I try to do, and you probably got a little bit of it from this conversation, is I try to think of what would happen to a single human being, a person like you or like me, if we really screwed up with the person we live with. So I imagined, so I have to write ads about coming back from 2 plane crashes, each of which killed around 150 or 160 people. And so I have to write an ad saying, I have to write ads about it because you can't just be quiet. So I said to myself, well, if my wife had a favorite vase and she was away on a business trip and I was playing with the dog or whatever, throwing a ball in the house for whatever stupid reason, and I broke the vase, well, here's what I'd do. I'd clean it up. I'd go on Amazon and order something as close, or Etsy or eBay, whatever. I'd find as close a replica of the vase as I could. I'd have it order. I'd have it express delivered, and the minute she came through the door, I'd say, "I screwed up. I broke the vase. Here's what I'm doing to replace it." So I said to myself, from a pillar point of view, what does that experience teach me? You make a mistake, you admit it, you clean up, you make good, you inform people. Those are the precepts, I figured. Well, if they work for an interpersonal relationship, why wouldn't they work when I'm speaking to 100,000 people, right? Because if you screw up, if you were drunk one night and you drove on your neighbor's lawn, you'd say, look, I made a big mistake. I drove on your lawn. I know you put new sod down. Here's what I'm going to do. I ordered new sod. Tony's going to come in and fix it. I'm never going to drink again. I'm taking a drunk driving class, and it will never happen again. I'm really sorry. And the lawn guy will be here Tuesday. You won't even notice the difference. And fences mend. But that's how you do it. The same way if you're a company. I mean, it's a little bigger. I killed 300 people. But you say, okay, we screwed up. Here's what we're doing. Ask us anything. Here's how we're fixing it. And we're going to keep fixing it. I'm going to keep talking to you about how we're fixing it. That's what you do. You keep apologizing. And you do it with candor.
That's fantastic. That's so helpful. But that, even in life, I think, you know.
But that's what you do as a comedian. You notice when someone falls, people laugh. So you say, well, how can I extrapolate from that? Something surprising happens and people laugh. So that's what I want to take over and capture and replicate if I'm talking about chicken soup. I mean, you kind of want to learn from human experience. That's what we do. And maybe, cause I'm an old man and I've had 2 children and I've been married 36 years this month. But,
Congrats.
you learn kind of large things to find out small things.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a second to last question. I know that
Okay.
we're way over what we were planning, so
That's fine. I knew we would be.
I kind of knew we would be too, but I didn't want to scare you off. So sorry for being a little disingenuous, but you talk about, as somebody who's in therapy and gotten value from therapy, I've seen some ways that it's not just made me better as a person, but made me better at my job, like working with people. So you're open and honest about that too, which I think is fantastic. How has it made you better at your job?
Well, first is a little bit divorced from the actual demands of the job. First is just having, you probably don't remember the TV show MASH.
I do.
Okay. It was actually pretty smart sometimes. Watching it now is painful because it's so heavy-handed, but a couple times it's pretty smart. And there's one episode where, a newsreel crew came into the camp and interviewed all the, to the hospital and interviewed, the prime characters, so BJ and Hawkeye and whatever her name was, Hot Lips. And I remember one part of that where they were interviewing Colonel Potter, Harry Morgan, who was a very good actor. He was a very good actor when he was a young man, and he was an old man in that, and he was a very good actor. And he said, he talked about, missing his wife and missing his horse and missing his children, his grandchildren. And he said, but you know what I miss most of all? And this goes back to your ageism question, because I can segue too. You know what I miss most of all? Is I miss having someone my own age to talk to. And, there's a value in just having someone to talk to, period. Just being able to put into words what you're feeling, what you're doing, what your tensions are, what your pressures are, how you feel slighted by this, how you feel annoyed by this, how you feel upset by this, how you hate this, how you love this. There's a value in just articulating it, because it's why I tell creative people, whether they're writers or not, is to write everything down. Just do a free write. If you have to do this, an ad on the screen in front of you, just write everything you can about it for an hour. Why is it round? Why is it black? What's it made of? What does it feel like? What does it do? What's a pop? Why is it called a pop? What's a P? What is a P? Does every language have a P sound? Just write every fucking thing down. And therapy is a little bit like that. It makes you aware of your surroundings. And then it's, I happen to believe, humans haven't essentially changed in the 200,000 years we've been standing upright. We have the same basic human needs. And so the needs that I have, the need to be listened, and I learned this from a planner too, very bright planner, Teresa Alpert, from Ogilvy. They need to be listened to, they need to be heard, they need to be valued, they need to be thanked, they need to be rewarded. By the way, all those things have vanished from the agency world today. That kind of empathy, saying that is empathy, that was a lot of my job at Ogilvy in my group, is not everybody, I know I'm doing a lot of talking, but not everybody can actually listen. And not everybody can say, well, I think that's a good idea what you're saying, but what if you tried this with it? And I think your challenge is going to be this. Or I think maybe you might want to swing it that way because, clients are going to have a hard time with this because I think this. But it's just my opinion. I don't really know anything. I've just, I have the, like a therapist, I have the value of not being emotionally invested. So I can be more objective.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree. I get similar value out of it. I like to end, with a pretty unspecific question.
Okay.
Just giving you an opportunity to, if you could share one thing with me based on what you know, or based on just your experience in general, one piece of advice to sort of leave me and whoever's listening with, what would that be?
I guess today the popular word is resiliency. And, I'm 62, as you know, and I never heard resiliency except in terms of rubber bands until I was about 58. But, there's a lot of setbacks in the world. There's a lot of things that upset you. There's a lot of moments you feel like you've lost, that you didn't come through. Someone beat you on an assignment. You didn't do a great job on assignment. You lost a piece of business. You got fired. You got kicked out of some place. Somebody left you. You got moved to a shittier desk. Somebody got a promotion. You didn't, something. That's kind of life. The trick is, to kind of get up and go, okay, well, how much of that's because of me? How much of that is circumstances? And what do I do about it? And 9 times out of 10, what you do about it is you go back and try a little harder. And you say, I'm gonna work a little harder. My brother's an attorney, and he went to a good law school, but not a great law school. He's at a good law firm, but not a great law firm. And he told me the story that sometimes he'll sit across a table with an opposing lawyer, and the guy's at Harvard, and he's at, Weil Gotshal or something like that, a white shoe firm. And my brother he says to himself, he'll look at the guy and he goes, you went to a better school than I do. You work at a better law firm than I do. You get paid more an hour than I do. But I am going to work you to death. I am going to outwork you, outthink you, outmaneuver you, outtry everything in my playbook, and I am going to beat you. And it doesn't make you a bastard. It just means you're putting yourself where you want to be. I want to win. And you work hard. You get up a little earlier. Well, if you knew me at Ogilvy, you knew I was pretty much always the first one in. And, I believed in always kind of getting in a little earlier and working a little harder and trying more things, because A, it's the right thing to do, and B, I want to win. Ogilvy fired me. If I were going to be really arrogant about it, I tell you right now, I have a better mix of accounts than Ogilvy does. They're bigger than I am, but in terms of the accounts I have on retainer, I have a better account roster than Ogilvy. So fuck them. And you know what? Tomorrow I'm going to have an even better one. And don't fuck with me. There's people who are bigger and stronger and faster, but I am not going to give up. I am not going to give up. And I mean, that's what I would tell, my daughters. That's what I would tell people in my group. That's what I tell people in my school, the class I'm teaching at Ad House. That's kind of the way it goes. This is a competitive, you don't have to be a bastard. You don't have to be Bugsy Malone, but you gotta work hard. You don't have to be unethical, but because there's nothing unethical about getting up a little early, but you work hard. and that's my thing. I try to learn a little bit more. I try to read a little bit more. I try to not inveigle, but my way into the hearts of clients. But you do that. There was an old Ogilvyism, just to go back there. I know this is a long answer. I'm kind of known for my long answers. There's an old Ogilvyism, which was, clients don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Well, a lot of times they know how much you care because of how much you know. And when you learn their business and you love their business and you work hard for their business, that's a way of proving yourself. That's what I do.
George, first, thank you. And resilience is, I think the biggest takeaway that I get from a lot of these conversations. And I really like the way that you put it. I find you inspiring. I find you
thank you.
Really generous with your time, and I find you extremely talented. So thank you so much for.
Thank you. And let me know. We can continue this. It doesn't have to be a discussion about pop filters.
It was a good example,
Yeah, well,
I want to buy another one. I don't even need another one. You sold the shit out of that. But thank you so much. And let's definitely keep in touch.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for reaching out.
All right. Later, George.